guys. This new sponsor of mine, Ben & Jerry's Sundae. It's probably opposite because of the way the camera is. Chocolate cheesecake. Oh my god, this shit is the bomb. That's why it's all over my face. Anyways, so all right. Just got done with my truck. I was just listening to a podcast from a clinical psychologist who was talking about like sociopaths and narcissistic like personality disorder, and you'd be a fool to think that we all don't have a smidgen or more, depending on who you are, of this in our lives or in our personalities. But she was talking about how kids are in school and stuff, and I just remember kind of like I had independence very young when I was a kid. I was out of the house when I was like 16, and I was gone from my hometown before most kids were going to college that were my age. I was on my way to Florida for the first time, and I kind of always had this thing where it was like I just always felt, and I feel like most people do when they're young, that you have to do everything in a certain way. And probably till I was like 21 did I just realize, like, yeah, you want to work and you want to have a good work ethic and you don't want to be a piece of shit and all of that stuff, and you want to be a stand-up individual, but there's nothing that's stopping me from living the life I want to live, which is, I just always felt like you got to go out and make shit happen. I was never going to stay in a town with 20,000 people. There wasn't anything to do when I was a kid. When I had my driver's license for the first time and I could use my dad's car, I was using my dad's car to like go to Canada, and I lived outside of Niagara Falls in a small town, and I would drive as far as I could to like the big city would be considered Buffalo. And I remember I would drive like to the beginning of Buffalo and be like, wow, I am way away from my home, And as I got older, I just kind of just felt like I moved to Las Vegas with my dad and my stepmom when I was young and never been there before. I would volunteer. I remember I volunteered to fly to Phoenix to pick up a truck and drive it back for the company that I worked for, one of the first pest control companies I worked for, Truly Nolan. 1-800-GO-TRULY. I don't know, I just kind of felt like, I know at a young age, I would be looking out the window in school, like in like 9th or 10th grade, just daydreaming of leaving this town, not knowing where I was going, but I just knew I knew I was never going to be here and play it safe. And now that I live, Tampa is the first place I've lived in my entire life, other than my home, where I've actually been there longer than 3 years or 2 years or 4 years, where I've actually been here, and I have like roots here, where I feel like I grew up here now. You know what I mean? A lot of people, and a lot of it has to do with the Southern way of living and how Southerners are, and, but it's like, my neighbor, 70 years old guy, he was fucking cool as fuck. I feel like I've known him my entire life. So from the time I was a kid, driving without the internet and going places, your life is these snapshots of all these experiences that you had driving through New Mexico, into Arizona, and never being to any of these places, and now I'm alone driving there, going across Oklahoma, and then going, fuck it, I'm going to go this way back to New York when I go. I'm gonna go this way to California. I'm gonna go through Iowa this time. I'm gonna go through Nebraska. I've never been up that way. Fuck it, let's just try it, you know? Let's go through Lincoln, Nebraska. Let's stop at this ridiculous fucking meth-looking hotel place, you know what I mean? While there's tornado warnings and, you know, I just kind of feel like I regret not having, I mean, it's nothing I can do about it, but I wish I had a significant other at the time that was just as, you know, wanting to do things like I did, you know what I mean? Like wanting to just fucking, you know, listen, I would save $1,200 and fucking move across the country and not even know where kind of have a general idea. Like, I'm going to go here. I think I'm going to try to get a hotel room here and get a job at one of these shithole fucking by the interstate hotels with serial killers living. I, you know, just don't know what I'm going to do. Driving through California, up all the way down and up into, man, I remember driving all the way to fucking Sacramento, going through Reno the one time, then I drove through Bakersfield the one time, up through Modesto and all of that shit, you know, and I've been all over California, you know, and just going, I'm allowed to do this, you know. How many people do I know that I went to school with, that I've known in my entire life that weren't in the military, that just, they would never think of, you know, and if they did this, they had a college degree and they were able to fucking, or they had parents that would back them, or they were already from a financially independent family. I didn't know what the fuck was going to happen, but I just knew I just knew that everything would be all right, because one, I felt at a young age that God was looking out for me. I knew I had discernment. I knew that if you're doing the right thing, not that good things are going to happen to you, but I mean, I don't feel like I'm going to get, like, somebody's going to dump gasoline on me and burn me alive somewhere, do you know what I mean? Like some crazy shit, but I just feel like people are just, you know, like, afraid to go out and make things happen, you know? I was a musician most of my life. You know, I auditioned for bands in Berkeley that were on Hellcat record label. I auditioned for bands that were, you know, not bands that most people know, but I would, you know, got to go to Seattle and play with the band that I was in that was really good. We played in Seattle, we played in Portland, back before Portland turned into the shit show that it is now, in the early 2000s. I mean, just Tijuana. I went to Barbados for a church thing. I drove all the way down here from New York in 2016. I told my girlfriend at the time, before I met her, before we even hooked up, I said, listen, I'm moving to Florida as soon as I get settled and I get my shit together and da-da-da-da-da, and I get sober, I'm gone. I said, you can come with me. And she's like, oh, no, I don't like the heat. Well, whatever. So I drove down there the first time. And I remember driving back. I said, I'm not in a hurry to drive back. She's watching my cats. I said, I'm going to go down to the Everglades, drive across the Everglades, go up to Miami, and go home that way, you know? And that's what I did. You know, you don't have to fucking turn around and go right home, you know? So I just encourage people, you know, I mean, if you don't have kids and you're, you know, whatever, you know, and that's kind of why my life worked out the way it worked out. Like, if I had kids, listen, I would have been personally, listen, if I had met my high school sweetheart and we stayed together my entire life and we had kids and we had a family and da-da-da-da-da, I, you know, would have never known the difference. I would have been happy with that, but it just, things work out, you know, things work out the way they work out. So go, you know, I kind of feel like fortune, you know, favors the brave, and, you know, nothing's going to happen, you know, just by thinking about it. I've never been a person that just thought about shit and said, oh yeah, that would be nice, that would be nice, that would be nice, that would be nice. I remember I moved to California during the worst economic fucking collapse of, whatever, in 2007, 2008. The homeless people. I mean, man, it was like the zombie apocalypse. I don't know, just don't let people, not that you shouldn't listen to people that might have a little bit more wisdom or whatever, it's good to like get in, whatever. But I always say, go with your gut, go with your gut. And I remember the morning I was leaving for California, I looked out at Red Rock Canyon and I was getting ready to pack up my car, and God told me, do not go to California. And I was already in Vegas at my dad's house. Don't go to California. That's what God told me. And it was the worst. I'll get into that later, how my brother kind of completely, after losing our other brother, acted like, we hadn't been talking about moving out here the entire time and da-da-da-da-da and doing all of this shit. And it was just fucking bananas. I even said to my dad, I said, I don't know what the fuck's going on, dude. But this dude is, he's acting like my ex was before I broke up with her. They were they both used similar substances. And I was like, yeah, man, I don't know. This is bad, and, it was what it was, until it wasn't anymore.